It's officially trade season in the NHL. A couple days away from the deadline. Is it a buyer's or seller's market? We'll debate. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, the daily Maple Leafs centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. You can also go ahead, use FanDuel. Leafs got a game tonight against the New Jersey Devils. My best bet, Dave? I think Auston Matthews snaps the skid. That's my best bet. That's my prediction. He's got 21 goals in 22 games against the New Jersey Devils. So nearly a goal per game average against Jersey. He hasn't scored in 8 games. He's due. I think tonight he bucks that trend.
He seems like he's due for one. I know that we talked about his slump on the last show.
Yeah.
It does feel like he's generating chances. The last game was his best outing in that regard. I feel like that's going to be what, in my opinion, shows that he's going to be capable of, getting himself out of it, is because he is starting to generate those chances that he wasn't before. So
yeah,
if he has a similar night to how he had against Philly, I like his chances, especially against the Devils team that's not doing so hot right now.
No, they've won a couple in a row here. 5-1, 3-1. Sounds like they might be buying at the deadline too. So we'll get back into the game tonight, preview it in a little bit. But the trades are starting to pour in here, Dave. It's trade season. We're, just under 48 hours away from the deadline as of the recording of this podcast on Wednesday, and had a couple of deals start to come in here late last night. Michael McCarron goes for a 2028 second round pick. And then Cole Smith for a 2028 third round pick goes to Vegas. McCarron goes to the Wild, by the way. So Michael McCarron and Cole Smith, both from Nashville, shipped out. They get a second and a third, a future second and a future third, I might add. And two kind of weird deals for me, Dave, because I keep hearing from all the insiders that it's a buyer's market, and the prices just aren't there for what teams are asking of their players. How the heck did Mike McCarron get a second round pick? And if Mike McCarron is getting second round picks, I mean, Bobby McMann, Scott Laughton, I mean, those guys have to be getting, at least second rounder, if not. Maybe the Leafs can get a first-round pick for their players if this is what the price is being set at.
I mean, yeah. If I'm Brad Treliving, the phone is just, you're not putting your phone down. You're not putting your phone down. You're calling. You think a second-round pick for Michael McCarron? Boy, what do I have to offer you guys for second-round picks and first-round picks? Like, don't get me wrong, Michael McCarron, he has the size, and I'm sure that's something that Minnesota coveted. But like, to pay a second round pick for that?
Well, let me ask you this. Michael McCarron or Dakota Joshua? Who would you rather have in your lineup?
I'd probably take Dakota Joshua.
And I would take a future second round pick for Dakota Joshua all day long.
They paid what, a fourth round pick for him?
I think so, yeah. In the offseason from Vancouver, in like a cap dump situation. Yeah, they definitely didn't pay a whole lot for him. So like that's really intriguing, but it's interesting because we keep hearing again, like yesterday, listen to all the podcasts, listen to the insiders on That's Hockey, and Elliot Friedman popping on 32 Thoughts, sounding off about it being a buyer's market. And I don't necessarily think that it's a buyer's market because there are too many sellers or that there's not enough buyers. I think there's going to be plenty of buyers out there. Just seems like there's a lot of quality players out there. Like, it's in a way, you look at how many names out there, and it's a little oversaturated with all the names that we're hearing that are being thrown out there in trade talks. And you know, at first I thought, yesterday I was thinking to myself, oh no, like with all these names being put out there in the trade talk, whether it's Robert Thomas, who's now linked to the Buffalo Sabres and Montreal Canadiens, whether it was Jake DeBrusk, who came out and said, I'm not really interested in a rebuild here in Vancouver. You hear Connor Garland's name being discussed, Evander Kane, right? There's a lot of great players that are out here that are being discussed within trade talks. Vinny Trocheck, Adam Fox. Like, there's so many good players. I was thinking to myself, okay, maybe the Leafs aren't going to be at the top of a lot of lists on GMs to call just because, Bob McMahon, OEL, good players, but they're not necessarily, in that realm. And I thought maybe the insiders are right. This could be a buyer's market and it could drive down some of the prices just because the market's a little oversaturated. But then I see those trades of McCarron and Cole Smith, and I'm like, okay, maybe not. Or maybe Nashville just, they were willing to move on from their players right away and they got ahead of the market, and maybe they just got lucky with their prices that they were paid. But I don't know. I'm just very confused now about what to think about this deadline, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, we always see deals and you're just like, what? Like the McCarron one was already the first one. It just they call it silly season for a reason.
Yeah,
like the silly to think that a second rounder that Minnesota is like, we need to get ahead of this and give them a second round pick. It's like just shop around, just call a couple more teams, and if you say, what do you want to give us for a second round pick?
If you would have asked me what value do you think Michael McCarron holds on the market, I'd be like, I don't know, 4th, 5th round pick. Like that's what my answer would have been. Like if we were on the Locked On Nashville Predators podcast and you asked me, what do you think, Mike, we could get for Mike McCarron? I would have said 4th, 5th round pick. Somehow they get a second rounder out of Michael McCarron. So, I mean, that kind of raised the bar for Brad Treliving, though, doesn't it? Like when you think about it, if guys like McCarron and Cole Smith, if the Predators are able to fetch second and third rounders for those guys, now all of a sudden you are looking for the Maple Leafs. You're looking at Treliving. You're like, well, you should be aggressively shopping anyone on your roster and just start accumulating second round picks. I don't care if it's a future pick. Like it's not this year. It's in 2028, granted, but I mean, I think that would still be a lot better than settling and, not getting a bunch of picks and prospects for the players you have. So, yeah, those two trades, very intriguing. And it kind of now makes me wonder whether or not it could be more of a seller's market than we thought. It was a very, very interesting couple of deals. But there's a lot of names out there, Dave. Let's take a break. Let's come back. Let's get to some of the names being thrown out there, some of the teams that are pursuing some big names, and maybe try and find some fits for a couple of the Maple Leafs who are out there on the trade market. And, hey, got a game tonight. Leafs, Devils. We'll preview that as well. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night, from early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts. There's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your read. And you can mix your spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate. Then you apply your profit boost and instantly bump up that potential payout. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti, with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, with brand new episodes of the Locked On Leafs podcast, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe to the show on YouTube as well. Get that daily dose of Maple Leafs content. we are just under or just over, I guess, 48 hours away from the NHL trade deadline as the recording of this podcast. And man, Dave, like there are a lot of names out there right now that could be available in the trade market. It's really becoming a crowded spot. Obviously for the Maple Leafs, the TSM put out their latest trade bait board, and there's a number of players that they've got on that board, and Bobby McMann tops the list. You got Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Scott Laughton, Brandon Carlo, Nick Robertson, and Calle Jarnkrok is also on that list as well. Simon Benoit too. So a bunch of names for Toronto. The level of significance that those names carry, though, don't seem to really hold a candle to some of the other names that we're seeing pop up in the trade market, though. Hey, Dave.
No, and like this is where you have to kind of sift through the good and the bad of the trade boards, because there could be a lot of players on there, but like let's be honest here, putting Calle Jarnkrok on a trade bait board, I don't think it excites many. If a team has Calle Jarnkrok to their team, I don't see many fans going, all right, book it, Stanley Cup final appearance coming up. Like that's the thing with these boards. You're just trying to figure out who can be on the move. And we've seen so many times a lot of these players just don't go they don't get moved, right? Like I
don't know, maybe I'm being naive, but it does sound like a lot of the players that are being discussed right now like are available and might actually move. Like Robert Thomas is a guy who there seems to be some really heavy interest. There's two teams making a push for him. We've heard Utah and now the Buffalo Sabres apparently, making a push where their offer is somewhere in the neighborhood of multiple first-round picks or the equivalent of multiple first-round picks for Robert Thomas. They might be also interested in adding to that package. I did see a report today that they're also interested in a right-shot defenseman, so maybe Colton Parayko or Justin Falk might be added into that deal in a mega blockbuster. Like that's just one team with some big names. You've got the New York Rangers, who've got a bunch of guys. I think that's the thing is you look at the way that it sets up this year with buyers and sellers. The teams who are putting up shop, the for sale sign, like the Toronto Maple Leafs. A lot of these teams have some quality players and quality veterans. And, you look at the Islander or you look at the Canucks, you look at the Rangers, you look at the Predators. I mean, Toronto, you can throw into the mix there, obviously, as well. Like the St. Louis Blues, there's a lot of quality players on these teams. And if, these clubs are looking to move off these teams and they're move off these players, there's a lot of really good pieces that could be made available. And again, like I go back to Vancouver, I was reading a story that Jake DeBrusk came out in the media yesterday and said he doesn't really have any intentions on sticking around for a rebuild. So all of a sudden, Jake DeBrusk's name gets thrown out into the mix. Connor Garland is a guy who's now, out there in the ether. So you're not just looking at UFAs. I think that's the thing, right? It's not, teams aren't just looking to move out their unrestricted free agents. Sounds like teams are willing to kind of gut their squads and move out players with term and just try and get as many picks and prospects and assets as they can to try and retool, rebuild. And it could just really oversaturate the market, which is why I think, again, like to go back to Treliving, he's going to have to time it really well. Like, going to have to time it well, I think, to get the biggest bang for your buck for your players, because there's a lot of quality out there that, for, all intents and purposes, are worth more than the Laughtons and the OELs and the McMahons of the world. And much like Nashville timed it well by getting ahead of the game to get a second and a third for McCarron Cole Smith, the Leafs are going to have to time it well to get, the biggest bang for their buck for their players.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing, right? Like, there can't be any deliberation on, is Bobby McMann, like I keep hearing Bobby McMann in extension talks, and I'm like,
why?
Like,
why?
You see what players are going for on the market, and you can replace a Bobby McMann in free agency. There, like what thing you don't have going into the offseason? Draft picks to help get an influx of young talent. That's the one thing this Leafs team does not have. So I don't like certain teams like St. Louis are now realizing, okay, let's go and see what our players can fetch. And I know that with Robert Thomas, I've seen the reports that there's kind of a bit of a wavering on Buffalo's part to want to part with what exactly St. Louis is looking for, which
I mean, they're probably asking for a lot, as they should.
Yes, they should.
Premier,
He's a first line center.
yeah,
Like he's exactly like
and he's young.
Find me a better center than Robert Thomas available on the market. Like that, like he's probably the top player available at the deadline if he, right? So like
factored his age and his contract too. Like it's just an incredible piece to add.
Hey, it's not our fault that the Sabres thought trading Dylan Cousins for an always injured Josh Norris and plus was going to be the right move. And when you make trades like that, sometimes you feel you get a little gun shy at times on going out and trying to make.
I don't know if that's the gun shy move. I think they've
made a lot of. I'm just talking about recent,
but that trade hasn't been terrible. Actually, he's played well when he's been on the ice.
Well, that's the problem. It's not the player's ability; it's his availability that's been the problem.
Well, he's been back since he's a guy who returned with the Sabres with the time off, and so he obviously missed some time, but he's got 3 points since returning back. He's got 20 points in 23 games. But yeah, Josh Norris is he's doing his part when he's healthy. But if they can add Robert Thomas, like now you really have yourself a number one center. Like Norris, you can't rely on him to be your number one center. And like Tage Thompson has been able to be, a number one guy for them too. But now you make that trade, you've got yourself a pretty formidable trio down the middle, realistically. So that'd be huge for Buffalo. The Montreal Canadiens, another team I've heard linked to Robert Thomas. So I'm starting to think he gets dealt. Like it sounds more likely than not at this point that he gets dealt. Jordan Binnington's name is now being put out there as a guy who's good chance he can get dealt. Sounds like Sergei Bobrovsky with the Florida Panthers putting out the for sale sign. They're waving the white flag. They thought when they beat Toronto coming out of the Olympic break that they were going to turn things around. Hasn't happened for them. Sounds like they're heading into seller mode, and they're going to put up a guy like Sergei Bobrovsky up on the market. Now, that's a tough trade. I mean, you're talking about a guy who makes $10 million against your cap. He's a pending UFA, if I'm not mistaken, though. Goaltenders not usually traded at the deadline. There's not a good track record of goalies having success as a deadline maneuver. So I'll be curious to see kind of where that goes. But overall, it feels like it's going to be a very intriguing trade deadline this year. Sounds like there's plenty of good players available, lots of teams selling, but a good amount of teams buying as well. So I'm going to be very intrigued to see kind of how things play out over the next 48 hours.
Yeah, no, I do think that these next 48 hours, I mean, it takes all it takes is for one or two trades to come about that kind of sets the market for how things are going to go. Some teams just wait. They don't want to be the first. They don't, they want the market. Sometimes it's good to get ahead and you set the market, or you let a team overpay and then it's like, okay, floodgates are open now.
Well, that's what I wonder. Like, you look at the trades yesterday, McCarron for a second. Like, is that a market-setting deal, or is that an overpay? And teams going to look at that and be like, "Yeah, that's not the market that we're letting get set here."
I know that's if people think now that's become the market that prices to pay.
A future second for a bottom, like a fourth liner, a future second for any fourth liner that's out there. If I'm a seller, I'm licking my chops looking at that return, but I just find it hard to believe that that many other teams are going to be willing to part with second round picks for a fourth liner. Although Toronto parted with a first round pick for a fourth liner and Nikita Grabenkin last year at the deadline. So You never know. You never know what teams are willing to do. So I'm very fascinated. I was a little discouraged about maybe what the Maple Leafs could do, thinking it was a buyer's market and perhaps it was going to drive down the price on a lot of the Maple Leafs here. But then I saw those trades and I got a little bit more optimistic. So, yeah, trade deadline Friday, 3:00. We will be, on the air to. I think we'll do a Friday. Are you available Friday night? Do a Friday night kind of recap show.
Yeah, once I finish work, it probably should be. Yep.
Yeah, so we'll put out a special like recap show. I'm assuming it's going to be a busy day for the Maple Leafs, so I don't want to wait until Monday for the show. So we'll have a bonus show for you guys on Friday to recap what happens with the Maple Leafs, expecting them to be very active at the deadline. So keep an eye on that one, and make sure you're subscribed to the Locked On Leafs podcast, so when that drops. But hey, Dave, that's all speculation. That's all off the ice nonsense. The political side of hockey. There's actual games still being played out there. Maple Leafs got one tonight. They play the New Jersey Devils. Let's come back and let's preview tonight's matchup here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as always. Maple Leafs back in action tonight. Game 61 of 82. Another meaningless game. They're all going to be meaningless from here on out. It's actually a really weird place to be, Dave. This is the first time in a decade, first time of the Locked On Leafs podcast era. I've been doing this since 2019, 18, 19. No, I said 1920. So I think it was the year Babcock got fired. That was the year we started this pod. And they've never not been competitive. And, here we are a couple days before the deadline. We're talking about the team selling off pieces instead of buying. And we're talking about them being underdogs against, a New Jersey Devils squad who has not been very good this year. I mean, it's just such a different feeling at this time of year than typical, huh?
Yeah, it's not a great feeling, especially like for it to eventually you come to expect the team to, compete for so long that eventually you have to go kind of in a bit of a rebuild, a bit of a
happens to the best in teams, right?
Yep.
I mean, the Sharks were competitive forever. And then they finally took a step back, and now they got Macklin Celebrini. They're kind of back in the mix. Pittsburgh was brutal for a little bit. They get Crosby. Chicago was awful. They get Kane and Taves, and away they go. I mean, Toronto's been through it too. They were terrible. And then they end up building up that core. They get Matthews. They get Nylander, Marner, and away they go. Now, whether or not they're blowing it up to that extent, I highly doubt at this point. I think that this core will get one more kick the can, I suppose, next year before making that decision. I think they need one more year of struggle to really tear it down and go deep to the studs. Yeah. But yeah, so we'll see what they got the rest of the way. But tonight they got the New Jersey Devils. It's always fun when you got Berube versus Keefe. I think this is part 4 of Berube versus Keefe over the last couple of years. Toronto, they've had a lot of success against the Devils over the last couple of years, and they've gotten the better of Sheldon Keefe. He has one win since going over to the Devils against Toronto earlier this year. They got a 5-2 win in the first matchup this season, but Toronto had a 4-0 win against them the last time around back on December 30th. Was that have been Joseph Wall game? I'm sure. Would have been at that point, I would imagine. Yeah, Joe Wall made 33 saves in that game. He was pretty solid. What are you expecting out of this one tonight? Two teams on the outside looking in on the playoffs.
I think we're going to see another one of those games where offense might be a little tough to come by. Devils will be. I mean, the Devils came back from the break, and I believe they lost their first game to the Sabres, and it was just like, not so great. But then they kind of, as you said, they picked it up.
Yeah.
I think they had two 2 straight losses, and they've won 2 straight since.
Yeah, they lost 2-1 to Buffalo, 4-1 to Pitt, 2 playoff teams, and then beat St. Louis 3-1, beat Florida 5-1, 2 non-playoff teams.
Yeah.
So if that trend continues, Maple Leafs, not a playoff team, so they might be able to beat them.
Yeah, and like I expect this. I mean, if we've seen the way things have gone, like the Devils should be highly motivated to try to get these 2 points that they need. They desperately need them, and so like I think they're going to be the more desperate team. They're going to come out. I expect this to be another one of those games where the Leafs are going to struggle to have possession time. Struggle like the Devils are a quick team that always gives the Leafs a lot of problems. So I do find that's going to be something that's going to be tough for the Leafs to match up well against.
Yeah, although I'm not sure why. Like, do the Devils think they're still in it? Like, the Devils are technically 2 points behind Toronto. Like, they're basically all but out of it. They had nearly 500 records, 61 games in. Like, they're further from the playoffs than the Maple Leafs. I don't see them thinking they got belief, do they?
They shouldn't, but I mean, like the Metro, they're only. I mean, actually the Metro probably not even easy for them.
No, it's not. Like they're so far behind already. It's
the only hope that they had was if one of Pittsburgh and New York were to falter, but that hasn't happened. Like
no.
So I do think that.
Yeah, but they also would need the 7 teams ahead of them to falter as well. That's the thing.
That's also true,
right? Like they're 7 points behind Columbus, who's not even in a playoff spot, or 8 points. 7 behind Washington, who's not in a playoff spot. They're 5 points behind Ottawa, 5 points behind Philly. They're 2 points behind Toronto. I don't know what gives the Devils a reason to believe that their season is still alive, if that's the case. But either way, I do think that the players on the ice have pride, and we've heard that multiple times from both teams. So both teams are going to try and generate some sort of intensity and try and have themselves a good game. It's one of those ones though where if you're the Maple Leafs, you're a Maple Leafs fan, you want the team to embrace the tank. Like I wouldn't be too upset if the Maple Leafs had a dignified loss in this one. We'll call it. They play well. But the New Jersey Devils just kind of sneak away with 2 points in this one, and the Maple Leafs streak continues to hit 5, and they get closer and closer to the bottom of the standings. Because again, they want to get a bottom 5 pick. They got to fall below New Jersey, so let's give them picks. Let's give them points on the board here. But yeah, it's wild, man. Like we got to find ways to get interested in these games at this point because there's just not a lot of meaningful hockey for the Maple Leafs here. But against Sheldon Keefe, I think that should be a little motivating for Toronto in this one. And like I said, my best bet tonight, I think Auston Matthews hits the scoreboard, ends his 8-game goalless streak. I think that'll at least kind of be the big positive for the Maple Leafs this week. Their captain ends the streak and scores his first goal in 8 games. He hadn't scored since January. Like, the guy hasn't scored a goal since January, like in the NHL at least. There's
I mean he's a January plus 2 weeks.
Yeah,
the 2 weeks off at the Olympics. But yeah, I do think that he needs to score. Like as much as we want this Leafs team to not win, be nice to see your top goal scorer score goals.
Yeah, dignified tank at the very least. Let's have a dignified tank where it still looks good. You happen to get goalied a couple times and you lose games, but the product on the ice is at least respectable. And guys are producing who are supposed to. You move out a bunch of your veterans, move out, you trim the fat, you bring in some young guys, you get Easton Cowan playing some games. You bring up a Jacob Quillen, for example, from the Marlies. Maybe you bring back another young piece or two via the trade route just to give them an opportunity to establish themselves. Maybe Nicky Robertson ends up with an everyday role at this point now. I'd imagine he'll get back into the lineup and probably score, a little scratch and score for Nick Robertson tonight. We'll see. But that's kind of what the season's going to look like, from now on. It's It's not necessarily about the wins and losses. It's more about the losses now. Kind of want those for if you're a team tank. But yeah, it's more about the future and looking toward 26, 27. How can this team turn it around to be competitive next year? That's what this season's all about, and taking steps toward that. All right, enjoy the game tonight, folks. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Enjoy the game tonight. Go Leafs, go. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.